government introduced a new law called the Online Safety Amendment from the 10th of December this year, banning the big platforms such as your TikToks, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube for the ages of under 16.
We've got rates of depression, anxiety, self-harm, suicidal ideation on levels I've never seen before. Social media companies have the ethics of a cash register. If a 12-year-old watches one clip, for example, on YouTube, on dieting, the algorithms then spiral them into a little rabbit hole of body shaming.
It is going to give parents a false sense of security. Now, every single thing that you could imagine that could happen on any of the named social media platforms, the stuff we're trying to keep kids away from and what we're trying to avoid can happen on WhatsApp, can happen on Discord, will happen on any chat platform that is in existence. Has he not heard of a VPN? Right, which every child in Foundation knows what a VPN is, how to use it. Also, no consequences, right? If you can do something that is wrong and get away with it, you're not going to stop doing it because Mr. Albanese tells you to.
Parents will see that as done.
It's time that we woke parents up to realise that this is a clear and present threat.
Poor mental health and suicide is complex, and really, if ever, is it just one thing. It is far too simplistic to say that it was caused simply because of the fact that social media exists.
In your expert opinion, will this work? Hello everyone and welcome to the first ever discussion panel for Dumb Ways to Get Hacked. Our show is all about making the complex world of digital safety simple, because often the biggest threats aren't the super hackers, but the simple human mistakes. And today we're tackling one of the biggest topics in Australia, the government's new law to ban social media for kids under 16. To help unpack this, I'm joined by three incredible experts, but rather than me reading their bios, I'm going to introduce you and they will introduce themselves. Starting off with Dr. Michael Carr-Gregg. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Michael Carr-Gregg. I'm a psychologist that works exclusively with young people. Been doing it for about 35 years and have known the wonderful Susan McLean for most of that time, and I'm a big fan.
I'm Susan McLean, and again, thank you for tuning in. It's great to be here to chat about all things online safety and young people. I was a police officer in Melbourne for 27 years, and I took my first report of cyberbullying in 1994. So I've been dealing with the internet, the good stuff and the not so good stuff now for 31 years.
Nural, I've been a high school teacher for 20 years, so I've been on the forefront and seeing the changes over the years that social media has had, not only on the kids' education, but on their parents as well, and in their school environment.
Thank you so much, guys. It's clear that we have the right people for this conversation. And before we dive into our opinions regarding the new law, I just want to make sure that the listeners are on the same page. This new law can sound very complicated, so let me break it down. So the Australian government introduced a new law called the Online Safety Amendment, which will effectively take effect from, I believe, the 10th of December this year, about banning the big platforms such as your TikToks, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, X, which is Twitter, and YouTube for the ages of under 16. But I think it's really important to note that chat apps such as your WhatsApp, Messenger, or game chats or games themselves are exempt. And the final note is there will be no penalties for children or parents. Let's start with the first question, guys. How do you define social media?
Well, it's a very tricky question because... Go, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not tricky for me as a psychologist at all. It might be for the cyber people, but anything that involves content creation, algorithms, feeds, likes, shares, and crucially, unfiltered user interaction, that meets my criteria of social media. But I defer to Susan and other experts in the field.
Michael, I agree 100% with that definition. But the problem with that is not everyone else thinks that way. So when you talk about social media platforms, and this is a coverall term that's relatively new in that social media really was the platform such as Facebook, it was MySpace in the early days, Twitter, and then sort of Skype wasn't social media, even though you could communicate on it. That was a VoIP program, voice over internet protocol. Then you had YouTube. Well, it was social, but not really. That was a video uploading program. You have Discord, does everything that you mentioned, but no, that's classed as a chat-based server platform. So the problem is the term social media now has expanded to be used in the same sentence as any really online platform. And that's where I think there is a problem, because as I agree 100%, if there is a social element and you can communicate with another person on it, then it's social. And it should be covered in any sort of rule or law that we have.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a wider issue. First of all, some genius decided to replace a play-based childhood with a screen-based childhood, and that's been a disaster psychologically. We've got rates of depression, anxiety, self-harm, suicidal ideation on levels I've never seen before. And as I said at the beginning, I've been doing this for 35 years. I live in Melbourne. It was made worse by COVID, but social media and telephones together, they haven't helped. My issue is that all of these things are designed to maximize engagement. They don't care about well-being. Social media companies have the ethics of a cash register. If a 12-year-old watches one clip, for example, on YouTube on dieting, the algorithms then spiral them into a little rabbit hole of body shaming. If they click on one violent video game, they're served dozens more. So it just escalates in aggression and intensity. If you watch something slightly edgy on any of these social media platforms, the algorithms will try and take them to the edge of the edge. That's my problem.
100%. And this is the issue with the social media. The government has changed its language. It's not called a social media ban anymore. It's a social media delay. But what the e-safety commissioner has talked about, it's her concern, like Michael's, is the algorithm features. So if you click on something, you are only, 2 clicks from disastrous content. And for some young people that might go and look for inappropriate content, that makes their life a whole lot easier. For the young person who stumbles across it or is shown it, because of course there is the for you suggestion where your friend has liked something, therefore the algorithm thinks that you will probably like it as well. So it's suggested to you, you don't know what it is, you click on it, and then of course that takes you where you didn't want to go. And I think the main thing is, if we could get away from the algorithms, that you could choose your content and your content only, that would go a long way to making the experience for young people a whole lot safer than what it is now.
Can I throw something else in there? I totally agree with what these guys are saying, but I want to play a devil's advocate a little bit here. We can't control what people post or even what. I think we need to teach our kids and our parents that once something is posted, you've got no control. It is gone. It can go into the hands of someone else. So I actually sometimes feel like the issue is a more societal issue as well. It's a bit more encompassing around people's morals, people's values, and things like that as well. Like, it's a broader discussion, and I'm not sure whether these laws are going to take some of that into account from that point of view.
If I could
I agree
respect,
with that.
Go.
you go, Susan.
So I was going to say, I agree that you really can't ban your way to safety when it comes to the online world. And 100% kids need digital literacy. They need to understand how to use technology respectfully and responsibly. They need to learn to be discerning. They need to understand fact versus fiction. The amount of young people that go onto TikTok to get medical advice is really concerning.
Yep.
So there is all of that. And there is, of course, the fact that once you've posted it, you've lost control over it. But I think together with that, the platforms would do well and do better if for young people they limited access to damaging content. So it's not that we're going to block, ban and take away. But if my 15-year-old is on Instagram, I want Instagram to send content their way that is within the law and that is in the bounds of, respectful online communications. I don't want them to be sent beheading videos, or I don't want them to see live the shooting of Charlie Kirk. That stuff simply shouldn't be out there on a mainstream platform. But this ban, the 16 thing, is not going to address that in any way, shape or form.
I think part of the problem is that algorithms don't have a conscience. And Susan is right. This legislation is not trying to kill fun or crush creativity. It's simply attempting to shield children from manipulation by a platform whose primary goal is monetizing their attention. And they thrive on profit, not on pedagogy. And the difficulty we've got now is that they will pay people a psychological benefit. They'll get the endorphin rush from time spent, not time well spent. And if we want, as Australia, for our children to grow up mentally healthy, emotionally literate, and socially competent, we must stop outsourcing their moral development to an algorithm.
And that's where parenting comes in.
Yep.
Parents cannot outsource this to other people. You do not want the internet and the associated platforms to be your child's arbiter of values, morals, consent, respect, etc., because it's null and void there. And if a young person is continually exposed to one type of content, they're going to start to believe it. I mean, it happens with adults. So we need to provide that balanced voice of reason in a child's head. We need to be the most consistent voice in our child's head. And that's a parent's job. It is your job not only to keep your children safe online as much as you can, but to ensure also that your child is not inflicting harm on someone else. Because we know that, peer-to-peer harm online is huge. Most of it does not happen during the school day. It happens at night on a parent's watch. So again, it is hard, and parenting in the digital space is difficult, but it is part of being a parent in the 21st century.
A lot of these parents, however, have also, the generation shift is happening, right? So these are the ones who also grew up with social media. And to them, it is almost like there's nothing wrong with it, because they've started seeing. So the kids who are coming through the schools now are almost the kids of parents who were around and already had that digital footprint because they created it as they were growing up. So it's really tricky.
We've got to educate those parents that you're talking about. And I'm getting a lot of feedback from parents saying, we shouldn't have included YouTube. There's a slippery slope argument. If we regulate YouTube, what's next? But what people don't understand, and parents need to understand, is that YouTube is a media ecosystem with social dimensions, comment threads, influences, algorithm curation that simply amplifies the stuff that Susan was talking about, the harmful content. It's not just some TV, it's a digital playground with zero adult supervision and a steady drip feed of values that no one would ever consciously endorse.
This is the problem. And as I say to parents, your experience with a platform is not going to replicate that of your child's. So you're online, you're doing whatever it is you're doing on Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat or watching something on YouTube. Your experience and the way the algorithms work is going to be vastly different to what is pushed towards your children. So if you make a decision that platform A is suitable based on your own personal experience, that's flawed because your child's experience is going to be different. The ads that pop up, I have young girls show me ads for vapes that they see across social media. I've never seen a vape ad in my life because I am not the demographic for a vape ad, but a teenage girl is. I don't have pedophiles trying to talk to me because I'm a little bit too old for that, but young people do. So it is trying to empower and educate parents to understand the reality of the digital space. I was overseas recently. I've been working in international schools, and in one of the schools, there are two very well-known local influencers. Now, that wasn't a job opportunity when I was at high school, but it is now. So these are two women that post every waking moment of their lives and their children's lives on the internet. Their daughters came to me independently of each other at the end of my session and asked, how can we stop this? Because they were getting embarrassed by what their parents were posting. Now, there was no naked photos or anything like that, but there was this vast volume of content that if you put their name into Google or ChatGPT, it sent them back to their mother's social media feed, which they didn't want to be a part of. But they'd tried to tell their mother, please don't post photos of me. But, mum's all about clicks and likes and monetizing her content. So she's not listening to her kids. And I am getting that more and more and more now, not just overseas, but in Australia as well.
Yeah. So let's move on to the key topic, which is the government solution, which is the age ban. And Susan, you've been on the front lines since 1994. So let's cut straight to it. In your expert opinion, will this work?
It will not work per se in that it is going to give parents a false sense of security. And I am 100% behind making a platform safe for its user, a digital duty of care. If you're going to have children on your platform, it needs to be fit for purpose and it needs to be safe, which we're not seeing at the moment. But this prohibition for under 16s is not going to fix it. I have parents say to me, well, if the platform is banned by the government, that means it's bad. But if the platform is not banned, that means it's okay. Now, every single thing that you could imagine that could happen on any of the named social media platforms, so the meta platforms on TikTok, Snapchat, X, Twitter, can 100% happen. The stuff we're trying to keep kids away from and what we're trying to avoid can happen on WhatsApp, can happen on Discord, will happen on any chat platform that is in existence. It will also happen in game chat. Right? Game chat hasn't even been discussed in all of this because the government's response is, well, games have ratings. Yes, they do, but the chat's not rated. And Roblox is probably one of the number one platforms for child sex offenders to find their next victim. Roblox has provided 100% of victims of what is called sadistic online child sexual abuse. And that's direct from the federal police. I was speaking to them a couple of months ago. So all the victims of that particular crime type were found on Roblox. Roblox is not going to come into the social media ban. So you can't play whack-a-mole and ban your way out of this. And I think that, yes, there are some horrible things that happen on social media, but guess what? They could happen on any other platform in existence. And a lot of it is maths. If there's more people there, there'll be more good and there'll be more bad. So it's not really that they are worse. It's just a volume thing. But I think for my mind, what I would much rather see is the platforms do better to make themselves safer, because there's still going to be under 16s on it. And there are some ways that, you can watch YouTube, you just can't have an account. So how does that actually keep someone safe? And in fact, it makes it more dangerous, because if you have an account on YouTube and you are between 13 and 17, and there are restricted modes and there are parameters you can put in place to limit content, you can do that with an account. But because you can't have an account, then it's open to God knows what. So the whole thing is ill-conceived, and it really wasn't well thought out in my mind. Also, no consequences. All right. If you can do something that is wrong and get away with it, you're not going to stop doing it because Mr. Albanese tells you to. That's just ridiculous. And has he not heard of a VPN?
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Which every child in foundation knows what a VPN is, how to use one. Michael, over to you.
Very rarely we agree, and on this particular occasion we do. I would say two things as a psychologist. First of all, age does not define maturity. So the whole idea for a psychologist, particularly a developmental psychologist, of saying at 16 people are all the same is just clearly ludicrous. I recognize the law requires an age. If you were to listen to what Susan and I have been consistently saying since this idea were mooted, if you're going to have an age, it should have been 13 for a couple of reasons. One, usually marks the start of high school, and it's much easier to control, I think, if you're a parent, social media use under the age of 13. Second, it would bring us in line with the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, which exists in the United States, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, legal expert, prohibits social media companies for collecting data on anyone under the age of 13. So
Yeah.
I think there's one good thing about it, and that is that it's sending a message to the parents of Australia that social media is associated with anxiety, depression, poor sleep, attention problems, and suicidal ideation. And that in itself is a good message. I like that, because it's time that we woke parents up to realize that this is a clear and present threat. We do still have to give parents the skills, the knowledge, and the strategies to teach their children to use the internet in a safe, smart, and responsible way. And that, to me, is the great challenge for 2025 and beyond.
Do you
And I
think?
think too.
Oh, sorry. I'm just got a question.
go.
Actually, I want to ask
Yeah.
both of you. Do you think with the social media ban that's coming in place, where a lot of the responsibility is placed on the actual platforms, do you think parents will see that as, all right, done? That's their
Yes,
responsibility.
absolutely.
That's what I'm worried about as a
Yeah,
teacher.
absolutely.
Right?
And to back that up, our new communications minister at a press conference with Mr. Albanese, or what someone recently said, there is nothing you need to do.
Yeah. No,
There is nothing you need to do. So that is just the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard, because parents, there is a lot that you need to do.
Yep.
Because that is your job. And the problem is there's going to be an assumption that their kid is not going to be on it. So they're going to take their foot off the pedal. They're not going to even be there and be an active participant in their child's online life. And again, I'm sure, hopefully Michael will agree with me here, poor mental health and suicide is complex. And rarely, if ever, is it just one thing. And if you look at some of the people supporting the ban, they've had horrible tragedies occur in their life where they've lost children. But it is far too simplistic to say that it was caused simply because of the fact that social media exists. And I found a quote by Pat McGorrick just recently, and I'm going to read you a bit of it because I thought this was perfect. It is easy for parents to believe social media is the total cause of their child's poor mental health, but no expert in the world believes that. It's complex. And yes, it is part of it, absolutely, categorically. but it's not the be all and end all. And as I said, if you blame one platform for something and you ban it, I can guarantee you I can do exactly the same thing on another platform that is going to escape this social media delay. One thing I want to add here too is, and I know that the eSafety Commissioner is copping a lot of heat about this, about being a censor and all of this. The eSafety Commissioner's office was not consulted in any of this initially. It was done behind their back, it was done without their consent, and it was done without their input. Now, doesn't that seem a bit strange that you have a federal government department devoted to online safety and you are not even going to include them in the original discussion, nor are you going to take their advice about anything? All right, so the eSafety Commissioner now is playing catch up. It's trying to make a limoncello out of lemons with the mess that it's been given. And, you know, it's unfair to put all the blame on that office because they are not to blame and they have tried their very best to make this as reasonable as possible. But the time frame that they were given, the fact that they were not brought into the conversation really until the communications minister changed after the last election, is just appalling. And it's another example of how this was so ill-conceived and it was done to ensure a vote.
So this is going to be very confusing for many people, especially many parents. Where can parents turn to as a starting point?
Well, the first place they can start is the eSafety Commissioner's website. They have a very good website that's full of information about all different sorts of things. And one thing I will also say there is the eSafety Commissioner is pumping out volumes of content around these new social media bans. So please, if you want information around what they are, what they might look like, what is going to be covered, please read for yourself, not via a third party, for yourself the content on that website. I saw another self-proclaimed cyber safety expert put a video out on Instagram recently that said, oh, I've just got all the new inside gossip about the bans and oh my goodness, they are different to what we've been told. She stated a whole lot of stuff that was factually incorrect. It was ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. She said that the platforms don't have to check the ages, that they can just spot check, they can just do random checks. That's not true. The agreement or the law signed by the Australian government states that they are expected to check every account and to ensure that they have no under 13s. No random checks, check them all. She also stated that the social media bans really weren't happening because anyone under 16 can still use social media. Well, that's not new either, because there was never a ban on watching something on any platform. The ban was around being an account holder. So again, people that have no idea commenting about this do my head in, as I'm sure they do Michael's as well, because then everyone else has to go around and try to fix the mess when people get the wrong information and then act on it.
As you know, Susan, Michael, you might not, I do IT for a living and I work for people's businesses and their houses, and it really shocks me how parents don't understand the concept of the dangers around these technologies. And I might get asked, for example, my son's going into year 7. I want to get him a smartphone. What do you recommend? And I say, why do they need a smartphone? What's wrong with the flip phone? So, Michael, I guess the question I have is, what is the true danger of giving a young 10, 11 or 12-year-old a smartphone?
I guess that I would talk about the brain development of a 12-year-old. So what we've discovered and what we've known as neuroscience has taught us and evolved since 1999, when the first functional magnetic resonance imaging studies were done, which showed that contrary to what we had thought, the brain is not fully developed when the skull stops growing, which is what I was taught at psychology school at Sydney University back in the dark ages. We now know that the frontal cortex, the home of executive function, planning, decision-making, self-regulation, is fully formed in the late 20s. What this means is that the teenage brain needs someone to be its frontal cortex, and that person needs to be the parent, the guardian. And part of the problem is that young people crave social connection more than coffee or money or sweets or sugar. And therefore, social media had this huge advantage straight off because it was connecting kids online in a way that was going to ensure a dopamine rush. And then the social media companies came up with likes, and that was even better than sweets. And therefore, it is the job of a parent to be the frontal cortex, the person who says no, the person who enables the young person to learn social and emotional regulation. And I'm pretty sure Susan McLean agrees with me.
I do. And when parents ask me that question, it's the same. It's like, why do they need a smartphone? There's no child in primary school that needs a smartphone. There's no child in primary school that needs a phone in reality, but they might want one. And then I explain, well, they're two very different words, need and want, different words. But I'm with you, Bora. Get a flip phone, get a dumb phone. They're not called dumb phones anymore. They're marketed as retro phones because retro is cool now. So you can go and buy a nicely colored retro phone. And that's where you should start. The other thing too is phones don't keep kids safe, right? Phones do not stop bad things from happening. When you give your child a smartphone, you are giving your child to the world and the world to your child. And that is not a good thing to do. Phones cause catastrophes. Kids get hit by cars because they're not watching, or they become a target for a robbery, which is very common in Melbourne, unfortunately. So you're setting themselves up for disaster. Yes, they might need a phone. A phone is handy to go, hey, mum and dad, I've missed the bus. I've got detention. Sport training's been cancelled. But that's all they need it for, to start with. And then you can build on that as they grow and develop and move through those teenage years and they show a level of maturity and good decision making, then you can consider introducing other devices. But again, no kid needs a smartphone straight up.
Another
Nural,
issue
in the
is
classroom, how does that impact you guys?
Yeah, no, I think another issue is something I get a lot of the time, and probably Michael will probably attest to this too, is parents actually don't know how to help their kids sometimes, or how they can say no, or how they can enforce those boundaries, or how they can sell them a retro phone, if you like, Susan. So even a lot of issues that I've dealt with is a parent actually just almost crying for help, like, what do I do? I've done this, I've tried everything. What else have you got for me? So it is, again, about educating the parents and empowering the parents a little bit to actually be that hard stop when they need to be that hard stop, and be that that voice of reason for them. Because I honestly don't think, whilst their intentions are good, I honestly don't think that they're all equipped to do what you were saying, Michael.
Well, they're not all equipped. And there's an old saying from the great Dr. Phil, never wrestle with a pig in the mud because you both get dirty and the pig loves it. And that is absolutely true. Your job as a parent is to set limits and boundaries. Your job is to give them vitamin N, which is no. And I've written 18 books. I've done talks for the last 35 years in virtually every school that Susan is now belatedly going to. But I am clear that this is the role of a parent. And I'm not advocating the shout and shame parenting that many of us grew up with. I'm advocating a type of parenting which is firm but fair. But be clear, parenting is a benign dictatorship. It is not a democracy. Democracy doesn't work in a family. It doesn't work for dogs and it doesn't work for families.
Children don't need a 40-year-old best friend because they're creepy. And they also start with the letter P. So they need someone that is going to say no. All right. Your job as a parent is not to be your child's best friend. Please remember that.
And your job is also to inform. Your job is also to be informed. And this is the value of this podcast. Social media is a marketplace that trades in human futures. Parents need to understand that as a basis for everything else they then do. And unless and until they have that understanding, I think sadly we will continue to see the sort of stuff that Susan tells me she sees in schools every day. I think the social media ban will send an important message, and it beats the hell out of nothing. And it'll be so interesting to see how the rates of cyberbullying, the sextortion that Susan talks about all the time, goes down following the 10th of December. But then other countries will watch us across the world. Remember, this is a world first. You might be as critical as you like of our politicians, but Mr. Albanese is doing something courageous, and he's doing something which has never been done before. Now, many of us would argue that he's doing it for, political purposes because his polling has told him that's what parents want. I don't actually care about that. I love the fact that Australia is making a stand against social media. And I've just come back from the American Psychological Association conference in Denver, Colorado. And my God, my own association was sponsored by Google. And when I tried to take the president of the American Psychological Association to task on that, I was shut down. Because just in case you didn't know, there is no more free speech in the United States.
And look, I think the one good thing that has come out of this is that more people now are talking about it. So there's more chatter. Is that chatter good or bad? Not really sure. But some parents are now thinking, oh, well, if the government are talking about this and they're going to ban it, well, perhaps it wasn't a good idea to put my 8-year-old on TikTok. What bothers me, though, are the kids that are going to be left hanging. And we know that there are a group of young people who get, their social connectedness online for a variety of different reasons. It is not there in real life. They are shy, they're neurodivergent, they're socially awkward. Home life is not fabulous. They have a community of care online. And I think that is the sad thing. If those kids wake up on December the 10th and find that they've disappeared off the internet, I think that is going to be traumatic for many young people as well. So there's got to be ways to support young people. No one still can say what is going to happen on the morning of the 10th. Are you simply going to disappear? Are you not? I know the E-Safety Commissioner is expecting the platforms to alert underage users that their account will be shut down on the 10th. Because I'm not an underage user, I don't know whether that message has gone out. But talking to 600 students this morning, it does not appear that that's been the case. My advice also to parents listening to this is that if you have a child that is likely to be impacted by this, so 13 to 15, please make sure that they get all the content, the pictures and the videos that are important to them off their social media platforms now. So things that cannot be retaken. So the last photo of your dog before it sadly died, all of that stuff that you'll never get again. If it's in your social media account or your child's social media account, you need to get it off and store it somewhere in case, because no one at the moment can tell us what is actually going to happen. So be prepared, get the content, have it. If it disappears, you have it. If it doesn't, well, so be it. But please be proactive, because I just know how horrible a feeling that is. You know yourself, if you lose something or you hit delete by mistake because you have, the old person fat fingers syndrome, it's terrible. Or your device gets a virus because you don't use virus protection and you lose stuff. It's horrible. So be prepared, get your content off the social media accounts in case.
And now for some final thoughts on this topic.
Look, I think that our public policy shouldn't be dictated by tech lobbyists, but by what's best for our young people's long-term development. And we've got a weight of research that links early and excessive screen exposure with anxiety, depression, poor sleep, and attention problems. This legislation, for all its faults, will put the burden of safety back where it belongs, on the platform.
And what advice do you give parents regarding from the 10th of December, from your perspective of the children you may now have to see or may not have to see if things get better for them?
Yeah, I mean, use December the 10th as your excuse. This is for those parents who don't feel like being brave. You've got an excuse now. You can outsource responsibility of your parenting, which is woeful, quietly, to the government and say, look, sorry, kids, nothing I can do about this, but this is what's going to happen. And listen very carefully to what Susan McLean says, and do go to the eSafety Commissioner's website. It is gold.
Just listening to what you said there, Michael, actually made me think of the mobile phone ban that came in at schools. It was something that, as teachers, we always kind of said, every kid's got a mobile phone in their pocket and it's interfering with their education and our teaching and learning of them. But as soon as the government and the department actually put that blanket ban on, that they were bans, then I know there was a little sigh of relief from the teachers in the profession. Is like, you know what, it's the law now. Like, I can't do anything about it, just put it away. You're not allowed to have it in class. So on the back of what you were saying, it's almost like there's probably a whole group of parents out there who are now going to be feeling that very same, sigh of relief that actually, no, you can't have Snapchat because you're not old enough yet. It's the law. So it's almost giving them that out and that draw card as well to be able to support their own kids. That was my little memory jog there.
Yeah. And I think that is correct, because it does empower parents to go, well, okay, not my decision, it's someone else's.
Yeah.
But the thing that bothers me, and we must remember this, 80% of grade 5 and 6 children are already on these platforms by lying, and they are there already with parental permission. So my concern is, how do we address those parents who have already helped their child to lie and are happy to help their child to lie in primary school? They're not going to change simply because the age is raised to 16 years. So we need to do more, and this is why the platforms need to become safer, because there's still going to be people there, there's still going to be children there, and they deserve as safe an experience as possible. But parents, it is up to you. It's not up to the government. You don't have to give your child a phone, and you don't have to give them access. You choose to do that. So choose wisely, but educate yourself, because the more you know, the better you can do.
Right.
So the takeaway here is, it seems that everyone's in consensus that the intent is correct. However, the method is deeply flawed, and that as parents, which includes me, I have a 15-year-old who I promised if I thought she was mature enough, I would allow her to have one platform in which I draw up a contract, which was basically just how to be safe on the platform, what features she had to enable and disable, and that we had the ability to look if we wanted, or we were concerned, more to the point, and that she could safely come to us at any time, no matter what the circumstances are or what she said or done. But now she's faced with this situation. I always say to IT people I support, just blame the IT guy. I do it all the time, So I said, listen, you know what? I'll leave it up to you, knowing well that I wasn't going to leave it up to her, but she knew that. But she actually didn't argue. She didn't say anything, because I kept my end of my bargain, and she did it. But it's really hard for parents who are just working. It might be a single parent, and that the government is providing you this information. As everyone's mentioned, the eSafety Commission has loads of information. You've still got time, a month and a bit, and it's already Christmas, crazy, to go in and look at these and learn and understand and ask for help. Reach out when you need help. You're not on your own. And for me, I guess the big thing that I'm concerned about, which is the last thing you've all mentioned, is that in the cyber world, what's going to happen now, and I'm sure I've already seen it, people will start making fake profiles right now. Yeah. Adults. They'll build 5 or 10 Facebook accounts, Snapchat, and they'll sell them to people because they can't get onto it, and people will actually pay for this, sadly. And the addiction, Michael, you face every single day. I heard something very scary today, that in America, where you just said you came from, there's a gentleman who was on a podcast where he said he supports kids that have been jailed, and he said until maybe the last few years ago, it was always, can you get me cigarettes or can you get me a vape? Now, these kids are actually saying, if I give you my Snapchat account, can you give this to my friend so he can keep I forget the name, there's some points.
Your streak.
Streaks, correct. There's streak points, and it's like, you can't be serious.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you're concerned. Back in my day, I don't know about you guys, if I never, not that I ever got into that trouble, but if I did, my thing was, I'll deal with all of that. Just don't tell my dad. That was, that's what I was scared of back in the day. And, you know, these platforms have obviously taken the attention spans from a young age, as you said in the front, Cortex being, you know, taught. And we've seen in that series on Netflix in England, we spoke about it the other day.
Adolescence.
Yes. Adolescence, that's the one. We've seen that, like, those parents had no idea in the world. And these are the things that we face. And that at the end of the day, you have to educate, you have to learn, you have to be involved with your children. I mean, Susan, we had the podcast not long ago, and you mentioned something which I did relay on to my colleagues, which was be with them on the game platforms, be with them on these various platforms, and spend that quality time with them and lead them in the right direction. And that's something that I think everyone needs to listen to and follow and learn from. Any last words from the panel?
I was going to say about the Snapchat streaks. I was at a school in Darwin recently, and an 8-year-old girl, when I was talking about that she can't have Snapchat and she can't use it, she said, "Oh, but I'm using my sister's." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, my sister's gone on camp this week and left me her phone and her Snapchat login so I can keep her streaks going for her." So it's not just kids in jail. It is stock standard Aussie kids that are panicking about losing their streak. And that's really sad. And that's to the point I would suggest that they need some sort of psychological intervention if they cannot function without thinking that there's something going up on Snapchat in their name today.
Michael?
There are two boarding schools that I regularly am in touch with. One is called Timbertop and the other one is Halkwa. Both of those programs take a bunch of year 9s, put them up a mountain for a year without phones, without social media. They come back in the most superb psychological and physiological shape. That's what we should be aiming for.
Nature. That's the best thing in the world. And
Absolutely.
Look, I actually just want to play the card that I think parents actually need to be more informed about what's going on and how to handle things. I'm still a really big believer in, it must be the teacher in me, I just think we need to educate the parents more and the kids more, especially around the algorithms and how they work, how to, you know, hide, block a report, things like that. There just needs to be more out there, and it can't be thrust upon the schools only to deal with. It needs to come from a wider perspective.
Young people need the same messages from home, from school, from sport, from drama, from dance, for everywhere else they are, because a whole of community approach and consistent messaging is always going to reap much better outcomes than mixed messages.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. And I will leave all the links to all the sites mentioned today, as well as yourselves. And I appreciate your time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.